Welcome to The Naked Architect, episode 3 of season 3, which is proudly brought to you by Open House Melbourne, ArchiTeam and the ARBV. We are here today with Michael, the architect, and Ant, the owner of Silhouette Hytte.
Hytte.
Damn it, Hytte. So this is not your usual client-architect relationship. Can you maybe tell me how Ant came to be involved with a project that you had already been working on?
Yeah, sure. So we started the project in 2014 for another client, and then after about a year process of going through design and doing some documentation, that had actually decided to sell. So I guess around a year later, after we stopped working with the other clients, we received a phone call saying, look, we've just purchased this home and we're quite interested in moving forward with the design and pretty interested in building it. And we thought, great, fantastic. So we had actually suggested we have a meeting in our office, and then in walks through the door Ant and his, at the time, partner Isla, and I thought, hang on a minute, I know you're my old neighbours. So, and it was quite interesting because Ant actually used to live across the road from us, and we chat on a regular basis, almost daily. And then one day he said, look, I'll be moving out. We just bought a house in Elwood. And I said, oh, whereabouts? And he said, Cyril Street. I said, oh, cool, we've actually got a project on Cyril Street. And he goes, yeah, awesome. And that was it. So we actually never got to fact find about where the project was, and it ended up being the house that we had previously worked on. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so and that means you came into the project with something already, wasn't a blank page anymore. You already had a design there. What was your feelings around working with something that was already semi-resolved?
It almost took a little bit of the difficulty out of the process because we weren't having to start from scratch with council and with planning and everything. So for us, that sort of sped up the process a little bit for us and took a little bit of the stress away from us as well. Yep. So we quite enjoyed that, and it was nice already seeing some sort of floor plan to get an understanding, I guess, of the space and what we could work with within the sort of parameters of this land.
And so did you still worked with Michael and his team to, I guess, put your own personality into the project? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we changed a lot of the initial design, definitely. But again, we didn't extend further out or anything like that, so we didn't need to head back to planning, which obviously could have meant objections and could have taken a year or 2 years in planning. So we kept the original envelope, and then basically we changed everything inside and obviously landscaping as well.
Yeah, okay. So maybe just take us briefly through the project. It's like a beautiful renovation, but quite a small footprint. Yeah,
it is. So look, it's pretty standard renovation for a small block. Original 3 bedrooms and a heritage home are retained, and then the extension out the back. The extension itself is about 45 square metres, but I suppose the key challenges for us was to make more space with less footprint. So we really utilised the volume of the existing silhouette which was left over, and just ultimately used that profile to create this building. And now we do get plenty of volume and plenty of light coming through, so you don't actually feel, doesn't feel compressed, it feels quite spacious, and that's what we set out to do.
I mean, it's extraordinarily transformative that with only an extra 45 square metres of footprint, it's not at all recognisable as I guess what you would expect with a sort of an older heritage home that just sort of runs down into a few little kitchen and bathroom out the back. Amazing.
Yep. No, and I think one of the things that we really wanted to capture was the materiality and celebrating some of the materials and then the relationship to the outdoors. So that's a big component of the house. So everywhere you look, you're always looking at some greenery. And also with the light as well, it was something we set out to do.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so let's have a bit of a chat about budget. So you must have come into the project with some expectations about what you were hoping to spend on construction. How did that all play out? Were your expectations confirmed? Was there a process of negotiation?
I mean, originally when we purchased the house, our budget wasn't to do a renovation of this sort of magnitude, I guess. We'd obviously just purchased a house. We probably just wanted to do something quite simple and just open up the back. But we thought obviously it's worth going in and seeing Michael. I mean, there's already some plans here, so let's have the conversation. It was really good working with Michael and his team because they were very upfront with expectations around budget and what you can get for your money, essentially. So after a couple of initial meetings with him, we sort of sat down and I suppose changed our budget and our expectations a little bit, and then went back to Michael, and then from there we obviously went back and forth until we found a happy sort of equilibrium where we can create a beautiful house, but within our budget.
So you use the word transparency around budget management. Can you maybe explain, and I might get both of you to have a chat about this, but what sort of processes in a more nuts and bolts sort of way were used by Michael to help you through that understanding?
I think it helped just straight off the bat. He told us a ballpark figure of what the original plans were coming in at from tender from builders.
Yes.
So that already gave us a good indication of if we were to see out the existing plans exactly how they were, what that would cost us. And then from that we were able to go back and have a chat and work out exactly what we wanted and what we thought would fit within a budget, which was obviously different to the previous clients. And we obviously worked with Michael through that to work out what we could achieve.
Yeah, okay. And I know this is an unusual project from the perspective of having a new client come in partway through, but what sort of budget management processes would typically be used by you on a project to make sure that you can build the thing?
Yeah. So obviously understanding site and brief. We have a feel for where things are at in the marketplace, and our expertise will lend itself to explain to a client, look, this is your brief, this is where you need to roughly budget for. But once we get through the design process and test the design against the brief, we would generally engage the services of a quantity surveyor, which is somebody who can then start to quantify where the design might end up, not just now, but also when you complete all of the drawings, and then also beyond when you start to tender, and what sort of, construction markets and escalations you might expect.
So like an accountant for a building project?
Exactly right, yep.
Okay, and so you use them to provide advice during the design and documentation process. Yep. And then what happens on site? So you signed a building contract for a fixed sum. Was there much escalation or variations that happened after you signed up?
No, not a great deal. So we were actually discussing earlier, I think it was probably around 6 or 7%, which I think is quite good. There were some deletions of things as well as some additions, so there was a little bit of balancing as well.
Yeah, okay. And so is there anything, that's signing a contract on a renovation, which has a bunch of unknowns. What sort of processes that you use in your studio to make sure that you can get such a great outcome where there aren't huge variations coming through as a result of unknown things once you're on site?
Yeah, I think it's all to do with your setup drawings. So the setup drawings that you provide to the builder, the more information that you can get, the more accurate information, it takes out any unforeseen things. Well, it limits them anyway. So you know that if I've got certain details throughout the project, then there's a less likely chance there'll be up for variations, simply because the builder won't have to make anything up on site, or you're not making really fast decisions on site to deal with issues.
So the construction budget is a big part of it, obviously, the biggest amount of money that you'll be handing over for the project. Obviously, architectural fees is another part. So this is an unusual project in that you weren't engaged from the beginning by Ant to go through. So maybe if you could quickly chat about how the fee arrangement worked for this project, and then maybe more broadly what you might typically do.
Okay, so because Ant had come into the process a little bit later, so we had actually done majority of the construction drawings. So we just had a pretty open conversation about what will you require for this? How do we get your personal brief into ultimately an envelope? So we spoke about changing some materials, redesigning kitchen, looking at bathrooms and en-suite. So I just said, look, how about we do this? We just set up a series of lump sum figures based on how many hours we think it will take for us to do the work, and we'll let you know if we're getting close to exceeding them, or we're well within the budget, or if we'll need more hours. So we kind of kept an open book, to be honest.
And how did you find that process?
I found it really good. I thought it was easy to understand and easy to work with. I always sort of knew exactly where we were at with FIGR, and that made it easier for us to understand our budget and for us to adhere to our budget as well.
That sounds like it's another version of that, expressing that idea of transparency and knowing where you stand in the process.
Yeah, exactly right. I think we just enjoyed a more open relationship on it as well. I think potentially maybe can get murky, but it was very clear and concise for us, so we enjoyed that.
And is this how you would normally run a full services project?
No, so we'd probably work off a percentage fee with some hourly rate or negotiated fees within that. So within the architectural profession, there's various stages that we have to get through, and the way they might work is you'd have concept design, town planning, design development, contract documentation, tender, and then the contract administration stages. So if we're working on a percentage fee, we'd allocate a certain amount to every stage from that percentage. So let's use the 10%.
So a percentage of what?
Construction budget, excluding GST.
So if it's a $500,000 construction budget, you're putting in, a 10% fee for argument's sake, and that covers you for all of those phases. Is that how it kind of works?
So that's one way, or another way is you will fix in the percentage for all the fees for, say, concept design, design development, and contract documentation. And in the other stages, when there's a third party involved, i.e. town planning, or builders, you might do that on an hourly rate because you just can't control how much information is coming in and out. So there's a big difference between a fee that has got 2 builders in a tender or 3 builders versus 5 builders.
Okay, so it's about being able to lock down things that are quantifiable.
Correct.
And then making sure that you're still fairly compensated for the things that aren't.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The process of engaging an architect to design something that's never been designed before for your family on this site with this existing house is, I can imagine, quite a daunting one. How did you feel as you went from looking through a telescope at the biggest vision part of the project down to the smallest detail through a microscope at screws and exact timbers and that sort of thing? How did you feel about control and decision making through that experience?
Well, obviously it's a process, and it's almost a process of elimination, and it's a process of finding out what works best, both from a design intent, functionality intent, but also from a budget intent as well. So I think it's just a relationship between your builder, your architect, and yourself to all have the discussion and to come up with the outcome of what material or what design is going to be best for what outcome you're looking for.
And did you feel like you were in control?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, you still have a contract, obviously, with your architect or with your builder, but at the end of the day, it still is your project. So and you're always in control. So if you are needing to delete something, if you're wanting to do an addition, a variation, at the end of the day, that's still your decision. It's not, here's the drawings, here's your contract, you must adhere to that and see this out. I mean, every build is going to have variations, and you're the one that's in control of that. So.
Yeah. So how important is that relationship between client, architect and builder for the success of a project?
It's absolutely paramount. Again, I think I mentioned before, it starts with the idea of transparency. So you have to be able to communicate really clearly about what you want to achieve out of the process, and then use the expertise around you to be able to make sure that gets done without too many headaches.
Yeah, and so typically what would happen then while a house is being built, what's your role? What's the architect's role?
So in a typical scenario, we're there to assess the contract and how things are progressing. So ultimately the contract is signed based on the drawings, specifications between client and builder. We're somewhat the agent of the client to ensure that things are being built accordingly with the design intent based on the drawings, with variations or without variations. So we will assess that. If there's a change to be made, we'll come in, assess the change, approve it, approve the time that it takes to make the change. If there's any additional cost, we'll be there to review that and approve. We'll also be there to, provide some quality assurance to make sure that what's in the drawings in sequence is being built the way it's been designed. We're there to approve any progress claims. So when the builder starts to claim for the work that's been done, we assess to ensure that is how much of the work has been done, and we'll release the money for that stage.
Okay, and the it's a highly technical undertaking to build something that I imagine a lot of clients don't have a huge amount of familiarity with.
No.
So you're there to, I guess, represent the interests of the client and have conversations with the builder?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of technical terminology. There's a lot of pieces that come together. And so it generally will happen when there's a speed hump along the way. So and that's when we need to communicate to the client, look, this is what's happening, this is how it's happening, and here's how we're going to deal with it. So we present some solutions, and at the end of it, we'll ensure that the design intent is always maintained.
Yep. Okay. And then on site, what was your role? You're here, obviously, watching the whole magic happen.
Yeah. I think it was a nice little balance between all of us, but I was obviously definitely on site quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we had weekly meetings, almost daily meetings a lot of the time. And we always discussed through every stage of the build, what was happening, what speed humps or hiccups had happened, what's happening next week, what's the plan for the month. So I was always very in tune and involved with what was happening. And for me, that was really comforting, and it was a bit of a security for me as well.
Well, I mean, the results speak volumes. It's a beautiful house, and thank you so much for having us here today, and for allowing us to tour through and I guess explore the background and insights of your experience and yours as well, Michael. Congratulations to both of you, and
thank you.
Thanks.
All the best.
Thank you.